welcome to Quito, known as the middle of the earth. I'm standing beneath the Apocalyptic Virgin who watches over the city. Let's go explore.
Join me on a hero's journey through Ecuador as we get to know the country's heart through its art. We'll explore the soul of this South American country that sits in the middle of the world, the Equator line, latitude 0 degrees, where the sun shines at its brightest. There are no seasons and a steady 12 hours of daylight and darkness. Ecuador resides in western South America at the equator and includes the Galapagos Islands. Its strategic position on the globe gave humanity a better understanding of the cosmos and of evolution. Ecuador is a small country spanning approximately 109,000 square miles, roughly the size of the state of Nevada. But for its small size, Ecuador has made an outsized contribution to the sciences with its diverse range of climates and ecosystems, from the Amazon rainforest to the Andes Mountains and the Galapagos Islands. Quito is the capital of Ecuador, which is where I began my journey. Quito sits at an altitude of 9,350 feet above sea level, surrounded by the Andes Mountains.
All around me is this panoramic view of Quito. You can see how the city is literally built in the mountains. Now over here is the Panecillo. It gets its name because it's shaped like a bun, a dome-shaped piece of bread. And atop is the Virgin of Quito. It is an iconic landmark overlooking the city.
My guide, Monica Paz Espinosa, is leading me on a hero's journey where I must trust the process because I don't even know what each day holds. I don't know where I'm going or who I'll meet, and the uncertainty makes me fully present with an open mind, free of expectations and preconceived ideas. I received my first clue at Hotel Mama Cuchara, a boutique art hotel that was once a Spanish colonial home in the heart of Quito's historic center, a UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Here it goes. Within its strong shell, a sweet treasure is hidden. Come get to know these Amazonian women.
My clue leads me a few steps away from my hotel to an Ecuadorian chocolatier, Choco Lodge, in La Cuchara Ecuadorian Gallery. Inside, I meet Pedro Armendariz, the cacao master, mixing up melted chocolate. Now, this isn't your typical chocolate sampling. I'm going to experience chocolate making from the bean to the chocolate bar.
This one is the ancestral cacao, the oldest one. This one is like the normal one that we collect now to prepare chocolate. This, in the old times, people used to sing. In the Aztecas, Mayas, they prepared this famous drink, the God's drink, you know?
Each pod yields 40 to 60 cacao beans.
It's gonna be like 400 beans.
400 beans.
Just to prepare 1 pound of chocolate. I mean, pure chocolate.
The cacao was a symbol of status and spirituality used to make the drink of the gods. Pedro teaches me how to make this spiritual drink by grinding cacao beans into a fine powder to mix with water.
Everything, and they are separating the cacao fat from the chocolate, just to say. So
I shall partake in the happiness drink. So here's the recipe: cacao, water, milk, and Grandma's secret, a pinch of salt to bring out the sweetness of the cacao bean.
After drinking fermented cacao, the chocolate and the beer versions, I say goodbye to the chocolatiers with an appreciation for all the labor and love that goes into creating world-class chocolate.
Our next clue, after learning about chocolate, here we go. Don't let those printouts go to waste. Breathe life into a new soul of paper and paste.
My next clue leads me to the mask maker, Alberto Avilla at El Carretero, who crafts handmade paper and cardboard masks representing Ecuadorian popular culture. On this morning, wildfires have been raging in the mountains surrounding Quito, and the mask maker says he has an uneasy feeling of loss. Alberto's right to feel that way. At the time we're traveling, Ecuador is experiencing a record-shattering drought now in its 8th month, turning the mountainside into tinderboxes. This also explains why his workshop has no electricity. Ecuador runs on hydropower, and with very little water to provide electricity, the Ecuadorian government is rationing electricity. The energy in this room is palpable, emanating from Alberto and his many masks staring at me from the walls of his workshop. Mask making is a form of political, social, and cultural expression, and I'm about to learn that it's also a form of therapy, an unexpected portal to my thoughts and emotions. Alberto explains how Ecuadorian culture is closely tied to masks, which hold spiritual value in indigenous cultures. He tells me to pick out my mask from a selection of unpainted faces he's crafted from cardboard and paste using clay molds. Finding the mask that fits my personality, well, it's a process.
He says that this mask fits my energy. He's seeing something. I'm not sure what, but once I start painting and answering questions, it will manifest.
With each thought-provoking question Alberto asks, I paint my response, and a design begins to manifest, expressing my emotions. I feel vulnerable and uncomfortable as I paint my innermost thoughts, yet the process feels cathartic, almost liberating, dislodging buried thoughts and memories.
Aquí, que son los dancers, y esa energía.
I know this energy is something that you swallow.
Entonces este efecto causó un efecto acá.
Has also caused an effect in your stomach.
Oh, wow.
I'm discovering that this mask maker, Alberto, is not your typical artisan. He's part shaman and soothsayer, and the mask, well, that's his spiritual conduit, his portal to the soul. After painting my answers to a series of probing and thought-provoking questions, my design manifests, and Alberto puts on my mask. Next, Alberto tells me to stomp on my mask and release all those thoughts holding me back.
Nunca más.
My crushed mask turns to ashes as Alberto lights it on fire, rendering my whole act of creation ephemeral, like one of those sand art mandalas you spend hours creating only to destroy, acknowledging the impermanence of material things and the release of ego. Ecuador once formed part of the Inca Empire before the Spanish arrived in the early 16th century. Spanish conquistadors, led by Francisco Pizarro, arrived in the region in 1531. By 1534, they had founded significant cities including Quito. The indigenous groups of Quito resisted colonization and cultural assimilation, holding firmly to their beliefs, rituals, and traditions. The various tribes spoke different languages, dressed differently, but shared the same gods, the sun and the moon. As various religious orders arrived to spread Christianity, they brought an affinity for Baroque art. Quito is the birthplace of European religious art with indigenous influences. It's a style collectively known as the Quito School of Art. My next clue, leads me to Santo Domingo Convent to learn about this artistic fusion. My guide, Vicente Ramirez Caceres, takes me on a tour of the site's artistic legacy.
It is still an active monastery. The Dominican priests, they are still living here, and the students who are preparing for being priests, they are living here, are approximately 13 of them. The Father Pedro Bedon, for him we have the name of this museum because he's considered the beginner of art in Quito. This portrait was done by one student of him, another priest. He was born here in Quito in 1555 and passed away in 1621.
The Church of Santo Domingo is adorned with gold leafing, elaborate altarpieces, and religious paintings, many created by the artist of the Quito School of Art. The Chapel of the Virgin of the Rosary is located on one side of the church's central nave and is one of Quito's finest examples of Baroque indigenous style. The choir room is filled with natural light pouring through its huge stained glass windows. A large songbook from 1671 commands the center of attention. The Dominican monastery was an intellectual center with a two-story library of more than 30,000 ancient books in various subjects, including philosophy, theology, social sciences, architecture, and medicine. Its contributions to education were foundational in shaping Quito as a center of intellectual life in colonial Latin America. A large illustrated Bible dating back to 1645 stands in the center of the library.
This is a Bible, a polyglot Bible, written in 7 languages. Today, just Hebrew, Arab, and Greek are languages that are still used, but the other ones are considered dead languages.
Before leaving, we climb the stairway to the rooftop for an up-close look at the convent's iconic church domes and a sweeping view of the city below. The church's bell tower is a fixture of the Quito skyline. I head to Plaza Grande, where the Cathedral Primada del Quito stands as the first cathedral in the continent of South America and is the largest, oldest, and best preserved. The Spanish established the church in 1535 and gave it to the Dominicans. On the steps, I meet up with an interpretive guide dressed as an Inca woman from the early 1800s. Paeshka takes me on an immersive tour of Quito's historic center, traveling back in time to the arrival of the Spanish.
So these native people, they were too much into astronomy and the movements of the sun and the stars. So they traced all the city in that way to follow the movements of the sun and the moon. And then, those Spaniards came, trying to conquer us too. So they locked down the city. And Incas were here resisting for 3 months.
Earlier, I had purchased a ticket and climbed up the cathedral's rooftop for a bird's-eye view of the city.
Thank goodness I am not afraid of closed spaces. I'm going up to the cupola, 54 stairs. I was warned it's this close quarters, so here we go.
Be prepared to navigate the winding, narrow staircase, mostly in the dark.
And here's the reward.
The Spanish built Quito in a grid system over rivers and filled in ravines.
So in colony times, this was called the 7 Crosses Street.
Cathedrals line the Street of 7 Crosses, which traces a sacred Inca path connecting the temples of the sun and the moon. By the end of the 16th century, churches and chapels had erected stone crosses in the street as public altars. One cross stands at Quito's version of the Sistine Chapel, La Campana del Jesus. Jesuit priests began constructing the cathedral in 1605 over a 100-year period.
And when Jesuits, the founders of this temple, decided to translate the Bible to Quechua for the native to understand more the word of God, the church and Spain decided to, expel them from the territory because that's a heretic stuff.
Ecuador gained independence from Spanish rule on May 24, 1822, and Quito became the capital of the newly formed Republic of Ecuador in 1830. Paeshka leads me to Plaza San Francisco, named after the Church of San Francisco, overlooking the plaza and built by Franciscan missionaries.
This plaza has been a market for more than 12,000 years.
I say goodbye to Paeshka, and as I continue exploring the old town, I notice my guide, Xavier, shake hands with two police officers. I later learned that they are tourist police, keeping watch over visitors in the area. They followed us around as a courtesy request, although I never felt unsafe in Ecuador. Petty crimes is typical in any tourist area, so I used common sense and remained alert, but never fearful. Next, I'm told we're having lunch at San Diego Convent, which seems like an odd choice. However, I'm on a hero's journey, and that requires me to trust the process and the plan. I arrive, greeted with a traditional Ecuadorian drink called mistela. Offering a welcome beverage is customary in this country as a gesture of hospitality. I notice two statues wearing cone hats with mirrors, oddly dressed masked men in floral and lace frocks with coins dangling. I step in for a closer look when suddenly they start to move, dancing and stomping their feet rhythmically as the coins in their costumes jingle and the little mirrors sewn into their costumes reflect the sunlight. I'm really not sure how to react until they beckon me to follow them. I'm following the dancers. They are called the Danzantes de Quito, and they perform indigenous dances infused with Christian symbolism. The Danzantes de Quito lead me into the convent's kitchen for a cooking lesson and lunch. Chef Jamie from Hotel Mama Cuchara has set up a spread in the convent kitchen and invites me to learn how to cook ceviche. It's a popular Ecuadorian dish using tropical ingredients from the coast. Full disclosure here, although I look the part with my chef's hat and apron, I am way out of my comfort zone. Cooking is not my forte, but this is part of the hero's journey, challenging yourself to learn new skills and ways of being in the world. And so I try. After lunch, Doña File takes me on a tour of the San Diego Convent built by the Franciscans.
Mucho gusto, bienvenidas al convento de San Diego.
The religious order encouraged a blending of indigenous motifs and symbols that defined the Quito School of Art. The resulting religious art conveyed Christian doctrine and established cultural and spiritual dialogue with indigenous populations. As I travel around the city, the Virgin of Quito watches over me. I've seen her from just about every vantage point except up close on the hill where she stands. So I head there. The Virgin of Quito sits on the former site of an Inca temple worshiping the sun. From the hill, a straight line leads to the Inca Temple of the Moon, also on a hill where a church now stands. The Virgin of Quito looks out south over the city. Ecuadorians have a saying, don't go north, or the Virgin can't watch over you. Agustín de la Hera and Matoras, a Spanish sculptor, designed the towering Virgin, which took 6 years to assemble more than 4,000 aluminum pieces. Next, I head head to the center of the world, following the highway signs that lead to the Intinan Museum. It's a short drive from Quito. The museum claims to sit on the equatorial line, the famous 0 degrees latitude, which is debatable since there was no GPS to verify its precise location at the equator when the spot was first identified as the center of the world. I meet up with my guide for a tour of this equatorial theme park.
And the museum that we're visiting is not just about the equator line, right? We just learned about the Amazon. Give me a sense of what's here.
Yes, what we do as museum is talk about Ecuador, roughly about the history, origin, and about the 4 different regions we have here in Ecuador. And of course, our highlights is the equator line, but we try to use this as a great opportunity to share and talk about Ecuador and give like a nice intro about for visitors coming from all over here.
David introduces me to Mama Rosa, a Quechua weaver who is spinning yarn from sheep's wool to make hats and ponchos.
Chica bonita, shami shami.
The Quechua people wear stiff wool hats to protect them from the sun, rather than the famous Panama hat, one of Ecuador's claims to fame.
Something interesting because it's made by sheep wool and glue, and it's pretty heavy. Please try it on, and you're gonna notice that doesn't fit completely on your head because the size of it is pretty narrow, small, okay? And there is a reason why, because the purpose of it is that you need to find the right spot and keep the hat still, and with the time passing by, somehow it will help to your position of your back to get a better posture.
Great for posture.
That's why, that's the reason why. And also at times used if the husband gets way too late at home and doesn't want to help the wife, then they can throw it.
The narrative of the equator's origins unfolds as we make our way to a large monument. The equator is an imaginary line that divides the world into the north and south hemispheres. It runs through Ecuador, Brazil, Africa, China, and Indonesia.
And here we see the latitude 0 degrees, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. Middle of the world, latitude 0, equator line. That's why here we represent on this line the equator dividing northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere. This one, it was measured with more technology. Nowadays, more satellites, and so that's why we call it that this is the actual equator line or middle of the world. Welcome to Ecuador. Bienvenidos.
Hotel Mama Cuchara is a former colonial home in the heart of Quito's historic district. The owner, Art Hotels Ecuador, connects guests with local culture through Ecuadorian art on the walls and halls and rooms, locally made products from soaps to snacks, and cuisine based on ancestral recipes. I wanted to learn more about the origins of this hero's journey, so I sat down to chat with Art Hotels Ecuador's CEO, Sebastian Vergara, who founded a micro-entrepreneurship program aimed at helping Ecuadorians make a living as safekeepers of their culture and traditions.
And Art Experiences Travel is a DMC that wants to do things differently. Right? We use like crazy concepts like the hero's journey, in which basically we ask you to trust us because we're not going to tell you what you're going to do. But we do give you clues and items. We give you a small riddle so you can try to figure out what you're going to do and an item that you're going to use in the next experience. And then we tie it all together. So it's kind of like a treasure hunt, but in a way different way. Because the only things that our experience is doing is we create the circumstances for you to have a transformational travel, right? Ascend to a higher level of consciousness.
The artisan workshops that I visited are part of a micro-entrepreneurship program founded by Art Experiences. The micro-entrepreneurship program empowers Ecuador's cultural safekeepers to sustain their families and preserve and pass on their artistic skills and knowledge. The workshops I visited were open to individuals or small groups of visitors for a fee, and the artisans were so enthusiastic to share and teach their crafts to the larger world. Art, commerce, and culture all working together to power local economies from mountain villages to cities across the country.
It's been very moving, it's been very powerful, and truly, it is transformative. You cannot do this and walk away without a changed perspective or a more open heart and mind. So, guess what? While we are here, it rained. This is the heaviest rain in 75 days, and that is after an 8-month-long drought in Ecuador. It's raining. The whole country's excited.
I say goodbye to Ecuador, a captivating country of curiosities that ignites the imagination and stirs the soul. I started my hero's journey apprehensive about relinquishing control over when, where, and what I was going to experience. And along the journey, I made meaningful connections and discovered common ground on a continent much different from my own home. That's the magic of art and craft. Not only does it help us make sense of the world, it's a shared language that brings us greater understanding and appreciation of each other and our ancestors. Until the Design Tours travels again, stay curious, stay inspired, and never lose your sense of adventure.